Thank you, Amber. Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting for May the 22nd. I'm going to call our meeting to order. Are there any declarations of conflict? I'm seeing none. I now have to wait a moment until His Worship or Councillor McAleer come back. Okay, Councillor McAleer's back. So I'm going to ask for an approval of our agenda today. Moved by Councillor Tweel, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Can I have adoption of our minutes, which are attached for April 24th? Moved by Councillor Tweel, seconded by Councillor McAleer. Is there any business arising from our previous minutes? Yes. Councillor Tweel?
Just wanted to get an update, Scott, when that neighborhood meeting is going to take place on Allen Street.
Madam Chair, through the Councillor Tweel. So right now, we just haven't had time to get to that topic just yet. We have a number of other things in the hopper. We haven't forgot about it, but we'll hopefully get it scheduled here in the coming weeks for sure.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'll stay on that, Councillor Tweel. Okay. So we are going to move into our reports and our discussion. The first one being Unsightly Properties Working Committee update. Scott.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to bring you a little bit of a update on what we've been working on at staff level to improve, to help the police and our city bylaw officer, Todd Sutcliffe, and improve the cleanup that's been ongoing year after year, and it just seems to be growing every year. So what I've done in this report is there's a bit of a flow chart, and I think that's the best way that kind of explains it. If you folks want to flip to that. So right now, if say receives a report, they're of an unsightly property. So step one is our bylaw officer will initiate contact with the property owner and try to work with them to have it cleaned up. And that's currently what's happening. So that process does not change, and it takes about a week. They give about a week to get the property cleaned up. If there's been no progress on it, then we move on to step two, which is the current process as well, where the bylaw officer initiates through the city bylaw, which is the unsightly bylaw, which is under protective services, to come to council to get direction, to give the manager of public works direction to go clean up the properties. Where some of the new processes that we've been working on with our partners at Island Waste Management and Department of Public Health is where the next kind of phases all fit in here. So at the same time as step two is taking place, the three parties, and I say we, the three parties, Island Waste and Public Health, we have all approved to it's a form or a standard letter that we will issue to any of these property owners that were having some challenges with getting these properties cleaned up. And that letter, it will outline the various bylaws and provincial legislation that each homeowner, each property owner is required to follow when maintaining their property in a safe and healthy way. If that doesn't, and then we'll also invite that home or the property owner into a meeting to meet all three representatives from each of the three departments and try to work through what that issue is, why the property isn't being cleaned up, and what assistance can we give to these property owners. Like Island Waste Management, for instance, they offer a number of opportunities and offer staff resources up to go in and meet with residents, to go meet with the building owner, go review their current plan and offer suggestions on how they can better manage their on-site garbage and things like that. So they have a lot of resources that it seems like a lot of property owners may not be aware of and taking advantage of it. And they have a lot of information out there that's translated in multiple languages as well, because sometimes there's language barriers, and so this information is available as well through them to help educate the residents of these properties as well. So if that step doesn't fails to yield results, then we would move to what we call our step three. And again, the whole time, the property cleanup is still happening from a public works perspective. So once a council resolution is passed this point in time to go clean up a property, then our staff are cleaning that up in parallel to all these other things happening. So step 3 is when myself or a delegate will meet with our bylaw officer and public health rep to go and review the property. Public health has a number of mechanisms where they can levy fines I think they would start out with public health orders, which you'd see at a restaurant, but they can issue property owners a public health order as well to get properties cleaned up once they see it is a health concern. And there's a timeline for how much time that the public health would give a property owner to clean up that property. That doesn't work, then we can go to step 4, where it's the city working with public health to issue a public health violation, so a fine under their existing legislation to essentially encourage the owner to start cleaning up the property. And these fines, they're the thing that with these fines, there's other associated impacts to that individual who gets the fine. It could impact their ability to renew their license and things like that. So there's a bit more, I guess, teeth behind these fines to a property owner to get that property cleaned up in a timely fashion and to continue to keep that property clean. So that's kind of the process, the additions that we've worked out with our 2 partners on the waste management and public health to try to improve the property cleanup. The other hang-up, again, which is not a public works matter, it's in protective services, is how who can give authority to for public works to go on private property and clean that up. So that's right now, that process does not change. That would have to go through the protective services committee, but that's one thing that could speed up the process and get us cleaning up properties sooner if that process was changed.
Thank you. And it's interesting because in tandem to what you've just reported, there has been, when I look at the non-compliance of our unsightly, we've just had conversation where our process that we're following perhaps at the city level as far as these having to come through committee to get to council, nowhere really in our existing bylaw does it say that. And I think what we just have to do is find a way, we talked about whether it's a CAO sign off or something that they just have to do versus, after their 1 week when the notice goes up, we shouldn't have to wait 4 more weeks to go in and clean up a property. So I think that will be something that we're definitely going to direct back where that process shouldn't be. I understand the steps that you've just laid out, but that's going to be time within this process of this working group. And I think we can tighten the time with our public service if we just give permission once it's deemed unsightly, that our bylaw officer will be able to go in after the week notice that he posts, but that will be going back. Is there any questions on this report that was just provided on the Unsightly Properties Working Committee update?
Right here.
Councillor Twill does,
Council,
and I'll wait next.
well,
I'll be
thank you.
second.
Thank you. Councillor Twill.
Yeah. First and foremost, I think our bylaw enforcement officer, Todd Sutcliffe, does a tremendous job in being the point of entry into dealing with property owners. I would say some property owners do comply and work collaboratively with our bylaw enforcement officer. However, some will cooperate to a certain extent and will not complete the job. This is one of the issues that was raised, I believe, at the last council meeting in terms of, I guess it's a bylaw, Scott, I'm not sure, in terms of expediting the process. And we talk about expediting the process. It doesn't need to come here, okay? It doesn't need to come here. It doesn't need to come to committee. Between your bylaw enforcement officer, yourself, the health department, should be able to expedite the process in a timely manner. We're not waiting for, half the summer to be over before grass is cut or there's a cleanup around a property. That this seems to be intensifying more and more. As you pointed out, Scott, the problem is growing. It's not going away. And, you know, I think it's a priority for city council. It's definitely a priority for the residents that, you know, we put the bylaw in place ASP. I know there's 26 proposed changes to the bylaws or new bylaws or whatever the case may be. This is something that needs to be done. Mr. Mayor, I would suggest putting this on a committee of the whole, and that, you know, we look at the bylaw and we have that in place so that our bylaw officer has the power to go through the steps that Scott has outlined. I think, you know, Scott, you've outlined a pretty good procedure, you know, a credit to you, and the other departments. But this does not need to come to Public Works, it doesn't need to come to Protective Services, and it doesn't need to come to City Council for a vote.
Councillor
Let's
Twill,
put-
and that's exactly what we just said. Is
I know,
agree with your
but I
comment.
have to emphasize it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're chasing, we're on the merry-go-round, and it just goes around and around and around and around, and everybody's frustrated.
I
So,
like your idea of maybe taking it to a committee of the whole, or so
What
that
I'm
we can
sugge-
just
what I'm-
clarify what's already existing.
what I'm, yeah, special meeting, yeah,
Yeah,
that's.
whatever you wanna
Special
call it.
meeting of council, so that Public Works, police can get together, put a proposed bylaw in place that gives the power directly to our bylaw enforcement officer, our Public Works manager, in consultation with Island Waste Management and you know, the Health Department, because, Scott, I'm glad you raised about the Health Department, because there are many instances where garbage is not being picked up, and it's attracting wildlife. It could be anything from raccoons to skunks to rodents. And, you know, that's happening in our city, and it never used to happen, not to this extent. So therefore, again, I'm going to reiterate, Mr. Mayor, that special meet ASP.
And it's already in place, so it shouldn't, it's more clarification, it'll tie into
I
what
know,
Scott's
but
trying to do.
I know, Madam Chair, but we need the bylaw, and we,
But it is,
again-
there is a
What?
bylaw.
No, but we need the bylaw where it doesn't come to,
There is.
where is it?
It's in section 8.1 of the Dangerous Hazard.
So how
Recycling.
come we're voting on resolutions at council?
We shouldn't have to. That's what I'm saying, is that this is our.
We don't have
don't
that.
have to.
The bylaw officer doesn't have that power now.
Yes, he does, according to our bylaw.
Really?
And that's what
So-
we have to get clarification
So-
on.
Well, you know what? Ever since I've been here,
Correct.
it's gone to police,
Correct.
protective services.
Correct.
And then the council for a vote.
But according to our bylaw.
Yeah.
We haven't had to do all those extra steps. So
Really?
that's what we
Is
have
that
to get
true?
clarification on.
Is that true, senior management?
Go ahead. Well,
Well, no, I need a clarification. Is that true, senior management?
The bylaw, because it doesn't delegate specifically, that's why it's been coming to council, I suspect. So the bylaw needs to specifically name, there's other examples, CAO or delegate or whomever needs to be identified in there. Bylaw officer himself has asked that he's not the only one that signs off on this, that
Yeah.
there be a secondary signature as well. So
but that's a
something
quick
that we'll
sentence
look
that
at.
we can amend our bylaw. It shouldn't take a long process to add in the CAO or delegate sign off and allow him to go in after that 1 week.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
think Chief Engineer did refer to property rights. So you have to remember, property rights is that's in our Canadian Constitution. One thing that we can give Angus MacLean credit for is to put property rights in the Constitution. So it's like if you break the law and the police come to my house to go in the house, they need a search warrant. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but for us to send our crew, whether it's Public Works or it's, let's say, Public Works, onto a private property, who is legitimately responsible or has the authority to give you that power? Is it the council, or is it something in the bylaw that we put in there? I think that's the question that's here.
That's right. It's in bylaw, right here, Your Worship. I want to read what our bylaw says.
No, I read the bylaw, but I'm just
Okay.
saying, I don't know if this is
He gives
challenged.
notice.
If it's challenged in court, I think this would be the problem. I'm just asking the chief engineer.
Madam Chair, through his worship, I think we'd have to clarify that ahead of the next meeting. Just
That's the discussion that has to happen.
That's what we're having here now. So to think that
But
it's in the
this is the wrong
bylaw.
committee, because this is through protective services. So we shouldn't be having the discussion right here in this committee, other than it
no.
goes tandem with what Scott's presenting.
So if I go back to our planning, if I go back to the summary offense ticketing bylaw that we're working on.
Under
now-
planning,
But that covers all of us. It covers dangerous, hazardous, unsightly premises, cosmetic pest. It's not just for planning.
but that's why we need to have a special meeting of council to look at this as a whole.
But before we get there, Madam, could I just finish?
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask the question to the chief engineer, through you as the chair. Again, we're talking about property rights. We have to be careful how far we go down the road. There has to be a litmus test to say that, can we do this, or does it take the authority of a government, a municipal government, which a legislative resolution passed by council to send our work crews on private property? If someone came onto my private property to clean something up and they didn't have the right, I have the right to call police to say somebody is trespassing my property. So this is much more complicated than what meets the eye. But my question is, Scott, you mentioned about IWMC, public health, and then again, I make reference to the summary, I want to get it correctly, summary offense ticketing system that we've been working on now. This is something that's been worked on for the last, if the deputy remembers, 4 or 5 years. And again, this is not a blame on the current senior administration. This has been taking place for some time. So don't think it's just currently, it's been, as Councillor Tweel knows, it was the past administration. So it's our summary offense ticketing system. And you're talking about IWMC public health. Why are we getting, like, IWMC is responsible for picking up waste. And Councillor Tweel knows back in 2000, when the city took responsibility for that and turned it over to IWMC, the whole playing field changed. So can you just clarify again, public health, why do we need a public health order? Because there's food debris, or there's something that could attract animals, or disease?
Madam Chair, through his worship. So, great question. So when we started talking about this, and this started probably late last summer, the goal was to create a collaborative approach so that everyone was on the same playing field. So island waste, the reason why we brought island waste in it, there's provincial legislation that essentially they're responsible for, that falls on the residents on how, you sort your garbage and sort your, recycling and all that stuff. And as well as they have the team that educates all the residents and business owners in the province on how to sort as well. So they have all those resources, and that's why we found they're a key player in this we need to know why the garbage was rejected. They can educate those property owners and those residents as to why that why that was rejected, and then help those individuals coach them so that this matter doesn't continuously happen. The reason why public health was invited to the table, a couple of reasons. One, the summary offenses. We don't have that strong of a mechanism yet to issue fines if we needed for these infractions. The other thing is, yes, there are a number of pieces of their legislation that deal with keeping properties clean and tidy from a health and safety perspective. So just like when they go and visit restaurants, they can visit a property and issue public health violations for an unkept property that is attracting rodents and other unwanted critters that creates a health concern for the residents. So the reason why I wanted to bring all three parties on board was to have a stronger voice make it more impactful to those, to some of those residents or those property owners that may be a little more challenging to get, that we have some more challenges to get their property cleaned up. We thought it'd be a stronger message to work together with all levels of government to get these issues better underhand.
Just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair. So we're adding another layer. We have police, protective emergency services with the unsightly, hazardous, bylaw that covers enforcement or areas that we have to work on. We have IWMC, public health. Like, we're complicating the issue. Like, if we have a summary proceedings bylaw in place, someone is not taking care of his or her property, that is the responsibility of the homeowner or the property owner, then you issue a fine. Now, that's what we hope to get to. And then if public health want to come in and do a public health order, that's a separate issue. But IWMC, I pay $215 a year for waste, recyclable and compost collection. That's what I pay. And every auditor that owns property pays that. So they have a responsibility, and that's why I asked the chair, we should have the chair or the CEO come in from IWMC to speak to this committee, not to the council as a whole, to this standing committee, and ask these questions. And Scott, could I ask, what do we pay them per year out of our public works budget to take care of some of our waste pickup? Could you give me, like, cleanup or whatever they have to do? What's the amount?
Madam Chair, through His Worship, so we don't pay for our buildings, I assume you're talking about?
No, just, I think there was something in the budget that relates to a payment to IWMC for services rendered?
So, Public Works, there's no direct fee to Island Waste other than when we drop off materials that are picked up. So we may clean up an unsightly property or clean up some of our own debris that gets dropped off, and that'd be the time we pay Island Waste to handle that. Maybe you're referring to the overall collection of waste and compost materials for the entire city. I think that's another line item in another budget, but I'm not familiar where that money comes from.
That doesn't fall under Public Works?
That does not. We only deal with any of the cleanup of our buildings or any material that we create and need to dispose of.
Well, I think that has to be brought up at finance. What are we paying there? So when the CEO comes in or the chair of IWMC board, that we can bring that to their attention. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I can tell you from sitting in the initial meetings prior to the working group branching off, Island Waste Watch is not interested in collecting garbage that's not sorted. That is not their mandate. Their mandate is to do what is supposed to happen. We're getting into problems in apartment complexes in different areas where it's really hard to micromanage. There has to be some sort of a plan put in place for these apartments and areas for sorting and trying to at least know who's accountable. It's really hard to micromanage who's putting waste where. So there's work to be done, and I think it's positive to hear that they're at least trying to collaborate, and we have to keep working. But I think the big start will be going back to that initial
So
bylaw.
just a quick follow-up on that, Madam Chair. When previously, we did, as a city corporation, as a municipal government, sort our waste with waste, recyclables, and compost. And that's when our public works crew picked up any of those three areas from, let's say, the receptacles throughout the city. Do we sort them or do we put them all in waste?
Madam Chair, through His Worship, I'd have to verify how that is. I'm not sure if our staff go physically through the bags and sort everything, but we can follow up and let you know.
Just want to note that in the minutes so I can follow up. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so, Councillor Twill.
Yep. Just a couple of things. One is, if you look at Island Waste Management, they'll write a ticket, we're not going to pick it up, and it stays on the street for another 2 and 4 weeks. That is completely, totally unacceptable. Because eventually the city, in some cases, will come along and have to pick up that garbage. I've seen instances where, 20, 30 bags of garbage just sitting there for 4 weeks, and it's it's just a terrible mess, and it upsets the neighborhood. So I think Island Waste Management, when we do have that meeting, I mean, they're going to have to be a little bit flexible too. Depends what, what they're picking up, what weight, black bins, green bins. But there's no way black bins, there should be tickets on black bins. And if there's a bag of garbage beside it or whatever the case may be, just grab it and throw it in the truck. But Scott, I think it's imperative when we do have that meeting, I want to concentrate solely on domestic, non-domestic garbage. I don't want to get into a whole host of other issues, but I think the sooner we have that special meeting of council and we can sign off to give that power to our bylaw enforcement officer, then the mechanism and the structure that you pointed out, Scott, I mean, you folks can work that out, amongst yourselves, and I have every confidence that you'll be able to do that. It's just that right now, the way it's set up now, I mean, everybody's doing their job. It's just taking too long. It's taking much too long. And, to go to protective services to council, that's not the way it should work. And, I did ask for a clarification from senior management. I would reiterate my clarification from senior management. If it's not in the bylaw or is in the bylaw, then why are we going through an archaic process when the bylaw officer apparently has the power and authority to go out and to basically, issue these work orders?
Okay, well, hopefully, Scott, you'll be able to arrange maybe a meeting with Karen McDonald to come in and have a chat. Councillor McAleer, I'm sorry, your light's on.
No, Madam Chair, just if I could maybe understand or clarification, and just in your remarks there earlier, you talked about these apartment owners and there are, I'm sure, problem properties where garbage waste is whatever, not being sorted, not being collected, then it hangs around. Like these discussions that are happening with Island Waste Management, is that piece, like with the apartment owners, that kind of segment going to be continue? Is it going to be talked about, or is it these discussions ongoing, and are there going to be potential solutions to that problem?
Well, I think that is some of the discussion that has to keep going. I know with every apartment is allotted one green bin and one black bin for their apartment. Each apartment's allowed their own garbage, and I don't know whether we can look at that coming through planning, and Deputy Mayor is the chair, and she's here to look at making that a requirement when you have an apartment, that some way you can manage it that way better. Yeah, some people choose not to because they don't really have the space for these bins, but the problem is, if you don't make the space, if you have so many apartments, each apartment really is required to have their own bin, but we don't have any kind of requirement when we do building permits for that. So that's something that maybe we can look at through your department, Deputy Mayor Yankoff, moving forward.
And just to follow up to that, then could it be potentially a situation where there's landlords that own these buildings, obviously. Can it potentially circle back to them in terms of them having some ownership in the problem in terms of the communication with their tenants, or does anybody have a sense of how that kind of goes?
It does, yeah. So basically what happens after Public Works goes in and cleans up the properties that they're going into, they will bill the building owner, but what happens is it's not something that's a direct billing. It goes into like a lien, I believe, is Scott correct, on their property? So if they go to sell their property or something.
Madam Chair, there is an invoice that gets sent directly to the homeowner, or the property owner, sorry. But if it's not paid, then the follow-up process is, it does get applied to a
If they don't
lien
pay
on the
it.
property, correct.
Yeah, so it's whether or not you have compliant landlords, basically, at the end of the day. So there's still a lot of work, and I think this was an update to kind of explain where this working group is right now. We know that hopefully we're going to look at what you had said. We'll get Waste Watch in and look at maybe being preventative too through planning a little bit moving forward. I don't know what has to, this will go on to council for discussion and information perhaps, will it?
Madam Chair, well, it is part of the committee package today, so it does get sent on to council for further review.
Okay.
Yep.
And more work to come through our committee, and you'll let us know when you can arrange to have that.
Just a clarification. So what is the timeline and time frame that we can get a bylaw in place to deal with this, to effectively deal with this? I mean, anyway,
think-
we're discussing it here today. I did request to have this on the agenda of a special meeting of city council, so can we not proceed with that and get this going and at least get something started?
Councillor Twill, or through the chair, Madam Chair. I think there's a lot of information. Like, again, that property rights issue, I want to deal with that. I want to make sure that we're able to designate that or allow, whether it's the bylaw enforcement officer, but just remember, our police officers can also enforce bylaw infractions. So I want to get that cleared, and I also want to get the other issue of, this collaboration between IWMC, public health, orders coming in, working together, all being one big kumbaya. But hopefully we can get the chair and the CEO in from IWMC for a good discussion. Councillor Twill, and I know you agree, Madam Chair, let's get a lot of information, so when it does go to a special meeting of council, there can be a great discussion led by yourself and others that want to be part of it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll make sure that a notice of motion gets put, but I know we are in crunch time, so it doesn't have to be the perfect solution, but we have to have a solution for dealing with what's going on right now. We have to have a way to navigate that because we're in problematic season as far as the garbage, so we probably, Councillor Twill, if I have to, I'll be putting a notice of motion in the floor at the next meeting anyway on this. All right, let's move on to the second agenda item, which is Persons with Disability Board, or the awards for recognition assembly, accessibility, whatever. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Persons with Disability Board falls under Public Works, so it comes through this committee. Back pre-COVID days, they would host almost yearly a recognition award program to recognize those both businesses, individuals in the community who go above and beyond to make their businesses or the community more accessible for all users. They would like to get that back on the agenda to award an award or have an award ceremony later this year. But in doing a little bit of research, we could never find when this was actually officially approved and permitted through council. So we're here bringing a report today to seek council support to proceed with an award ceremony. And in the report, you'll see there's a number of criteria that the board would use to select these individuals or these groups or businesses in the community. And if approved, they would like to host this awards, as I said, later this year.
Thank you. The board will be excited. They've been waiting for these for a bit. Is there any way we can approve something one time where we don't have to do this every year? Is there a way that we can, or does this have to be approved every year? CAO Mohammed, do you know?
Thank you. Through to the chair. Yes, a resolution can just be drafted that sets this as standing approved.
And if they change the criteria, then they can come back at that point, but we can have a fairly basic open, that would be great. Okay, so.
And just for your information, Madam Chair, in
Yeah.
the past, it never came through council. We've done several years of awards that went right to honoring the businesses, establishments, organizations that provide accessibility, and that includes the accessible taxi too, that hopefully we can get an announcement soon on it.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Can I have someone support to move these to council for approval? Your worship, seconded by Councillor Twill.
Yeah, just a question, or again, a clarification. Again, this never had to come to city council. The board, with the staff, there was a criteria that was set up for awards. I think if you go back, Scott, maybe Tracy McLean can get you that information when we did have them awards and what the awards consisted of. So that might give you a better idea on how how it was all administered and how it was evaluated
Council
and how it unfolded. So I don't believe you need a resolution because we never had to do that in the past. But all that information, I'm sure Tracy would be able to dig that out for you.
And I'm just seeing, and it was brought up, there's no resolution per se for this, so it's more for information and to seek council's permission to accept, I guess, moving forward unless, in the report.
Thank you, Chair. That was a miss on my part. There should be a recommendation that this be approved as a standing function of this committee, because the committee just can't come up with its own ideas and run with it. Has to be approved through council in terms of any programs and stuff like that. It might have happened a long time ago. Tracy may have a record of it, but nobody, I guess that knowledge isn't here for this report. So it's going to council anyway. It will just be a resolution that will be drafted.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Madam Chair, just a point of order. We did have these ceremonies, and it's already been passed, as Councillor Tweel with his corporate history. I think this is just going for information. I don't know why a resolution is required to accept something that's already been exercised numerous years. So I think that, if you want a resolution, fine, but I think it's redundant.
It is. I think it's more than a clarification that we don't have to approve this every year, whatever way we get it there, just to carry on and let the board recommend or recognize.
It might be in the terms of reference to, would it not, for the Person with Disabilities Committee?
No,
Good point.
Not in the terms of reference.
it's not. So maybe that's an area we look at putting. A good point, Councillor Twill.
Tracy gave you the information, Scott.
Okay, we'll find out. Okay, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is the speed hump program update. And prior to Scott getting into this, I think it's really important to clarify that we are going to probably operate under our existing speed hump program for this year because we are in the process of putting the speed humps out now. I'll let the manager talk about that, but I think it's going to be a working document, and I'm going to let you provide your report, and I'm sure there'll be some discussion.
My apologies. Can we just go back on the last item? I know there's some little bit of confusion, but there was never an actual, his worship did move it, but there was never a seconder and
Oh,
follow the
sorry.
process. We should just follow the process just to make sure.
Second, someone to
We're all
move this
good to
on to
go?
council. You're good to move this to council for the civic board? Okay, I'm sorry. Everybody in favor of that? Everybody is? Great, thank you. Thank you for that.
Perfect. Didn't want to miss anything here.
Speed hump program.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this matter, we brought a few reports now to this committee. One of the pieces of information we were waiting for and we now have is a review. We've done a review of our city road network. And what we've done is we've taken every street in the city and figured out which ward it goes into. And then we also took out any road from that list that would never be qualify or never qualify for a speed hump. So your University Avenues, your Belvedere Avenues, those streets that we would never entertain a speed hump. Then what we did was we figured out what the remaining balance of residential streets in each ward and figured out what percentage of residential streets are in each ward was, and then that's how we figured out the number of allocated speed humps for each ward is based on the percentage of residential streets that you have in each individual ward. As a way of trying to spread these speed humps through throughout the city in a fair and equal way as best we could. So that's why I want to present that information to you folks today. We still have option A and option B on the table, where the big difference between option A and option B is a more collaborative approach, which with the individual councillors, if they choose to be part of the process. We have found a couple examples of this where it happens in other municipalities. Now, our option A is just setting the it just takes that process out of it. So we're open to either process, but we would our recommendation was to be, as counselors, you folks are on the ground, you're hearing the concerns, you meet with the residents more often than we do. And we value your input and when we try to make these decisions on where to place speed humps. So that's the new update since the last time this was here. As the chair alluded to, though, just because of the timing, this is a lot of information still to digest. The other big challenge is it might take a little bit of time to roll this out to figure out all those locations. Our plan is to proceed as status quo as last year. We do have 25 speed humps on order, should be coming in the next month or two, which we have a number of, I think we have 15 new requests, speed hump requests in for various areas of the city. And so we would essentially start reviewing those and recommending locations in various wards around the city. And then as those other 25 come in, that's where we would place them within the number of speed humps that are showing in this table, if that's the direction council chooses to go.
Thank you. I know one thing I would like in the updated council package, we talked about it already, Scott, would be just the current list of where speed bump, how many speed humps per ward. I think that's going to be valuable information. The more we can front load the information, the more people understand. And the other thing is, and I can invite Deputy Mayor to speak to it if she wants in the committee today, is the big thing with trying to keep councillors in their lane as far as operational use, determining where, and being involved in the decision. As councillors, I think our ears are always to the ground. Councillor Tweel does a great job of advocating for his residents, as do most of us, but it's always good to, you could always say, have you thought about? But as far as making the final decision, I think that is putting council back into the operations, where I know that we're trying to come out of the operations. But do you have something you want to speak to on that? I know this is probably your big point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess I would just reiterate what you had said, is to see this speed hump program, I was, a little perplexed that we would be involved in such an operational piece. It's great that we can work with our residents and direct them in the areas where the process is, whether they get signatures, how they apply through Public Works. But I know I'm not interested a bit in deciding from a safety perspective where a speed hump goes.
And I think that's what this chart that's in front of us demonstrates, is based on the amount of roadway and kilometers per, where there's going to be an opportunity for speed and our criteria that we have in place, we should be able to look at that. But that would be my thought. Do you have anything you want to add right now on this issue, Councillor
I
Tweel?
do.
I figured you would.
I might as well say it. I think this idea of operational, what's operational versus, communicating with your residents, I think it's an overused term. I think Scott Adams outlined it perfectly, in that we're the ones that are on the ground, we're the ones that are discussing with their residents the concerns and suggestions and recommendations that they have. So I like the Plan B. I like the fact that we can be involved in the decision-making process because, in some cases, some streets have never, ever gotten a speed hump. Scott, you know that. If you do an inventory and look at where they're situated across the city, there's an outstanding disparity, and it's pretty evident. So, this idea of operational, staying in your lane, I'm not sure. This is, to my mind, this is a new methodology of governance, which I'm really not really interested in. I'm interested in bringing forth, speaking for myself, bringing forth the recommendation from the constituencies, our constituency issues that are extremely important to the residents. So I'm in favor of that mode of governance, not, hands off. This is so-called operational and can't be involved. That's why we knock on doors. So, that's why we take on the responsibility. It's what we signed up for.
Counselor
So-
Twill, you
so,
have 7 speed humps.
Pardon me?
According to the chart, you have 7 speed humps in all of Ward 4.
I have what?
You have 7 speed humps that would be designated to all of Ward 4. And you feel that you're confident and comfortable to decide where those 7 speed humps go in your whole entire ward.
I have 7 now, you're saying?
That's what you will be getting, based on the chart.
Well, yeah, but still, I want to
you
make
want-
sure. What I'm trying to say, Madam Chair, is I want to make sure that residents that have been lobbying for speed humps for a number of years, I want to make sure that, that their voice is being heard. I mean, that's the role that we play.
100%.
So-
And that's
so-
still your role.
Yeah, I know it's a role, but I mean, I keep hearing, and I'm going to be candid with you, I keep hearing, well, that's operational. We're not involved with that, whether street paving and all that, and I totally disagree with that. These are constituency issues. These are taxpayers that want their elected representatives to bring forth and to make sure that
Their voices are heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they fill out the application.
I know, but
and then they
I
get the
understand
data
that, but
to
but
support
from a
it.
I understand that, but from a philosophical point of view, the pendulum has swung too far the other way under these so-called operational issues. I'm not interested
Okay,
in
but we're
that.
not going to talk, we're just looking at this. You can support
brought-
whatever you want.
I know,
Don't
but you
point at
brought
me.
it up.
Don't point at me. Don't point at me. No, don't point at me. Is there anybody else that would have anything else to add to this?
I do, Madam Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
So on page 12 of our document, this is the proposal. What disappoints me is that we don't have the current numbers.
And I did ask.
Where you cannot make, where we cannot make a comparative analysis. And permitted kilometer or kilometers of roadway, 186.6. So we have close to 252 kilometers of roadways and streets in the city. So I think that you're accounting for University Avenue, Belvedere Avenue, Allen Street, like main streets and roads that go north, south, east, west, which accounts for another maybe 64 kilometers. That's, if you do the simple math. And the total number of speed humps that will, at 666, is that 100 did you add? Is it 100? So, and you get 25 more on order, correct?
So the Madam Chair, through the worship, so the 25 that are on order brings us up to the 100
Okay,
number.
so that's, okay, there, again, I have to ask these questions of clarification because I'm assuming that we have that 100 there, but we don't. We need to buy 25 more. And to hear all the discussion and look, I heard a lot of it at the door, still hear a lot of it at the door about speeding in neighborhoods, speeding through the city, whether it's north, south, east, west. And there is a need. So if there's an appetite, I'd like to add not 25 more, but 50 more to that. So instead of 25, it would be 75 additional humps, speed humps that we would buy. And then I look at the other thing too, Madam Chairman, is at 186 kilometers. So we talk about paving. Wow, now we know. We know where we need to put our dollars when it comes to paving, upgrading our streets. We got the breakdown of numbers of kilometers in each of the wards. That's good information. That's good data. That's what I'd like to see. That can make us be more productive and efficient, effective decision makers in laying out policy. So the last point I have to make, Madam Chair, is, so we've developed over the years, and I think Councillor Twill was on council when they developed this, if you want to put a speed hump in your neighborhood, you have to get a buy-in from the neighborhood. So you have to go around with a form, get people to sign it. My question is that still there? So, what's that? No. The status is that if someone if neighbors in your neighborhood want to put a speed hump on their street, they have to get download a form. It's a petition.
Get signatures from their neighbors.
60%
Yeah.
has to agree to it, correct?
Yeah.
So that's public input. That's affecting change. That's influence operational. let me just finish, Councillor Twill. So we get information from having our ear on the ground too. And again, I've heard that, in the MGA, we cannot direct staff. I've never tried to direct staff. I've always said, and I know Councillor Twill has said it, recommendations. You have to stay away from, I'm going to tell staff what to do. We don't tell staff what to do. We can recommend. That form that goes out to neighborhoods recommends.
Yeah.
And I tell, Madam Chair, I think that instead of adding 25 more, put it up to 75, and we'll work out the math after that. Thank you.
My goodness, they're going to be busy. They'll have to start
Yeah, just-
putting them down in, just one moment, Councillor Twill. They'll
Yeah.
have to start putting them down in February. But I like your point, Your Worship. I know, I'm just saying.
But just on
Okay.
that,
Go ahead, Councillor Twill.
just on that, Mayor Brown, that was done. That exercise was completed.
What exercise?
Filling out the form. And residents have done that, but to no avail. It just didn't happen. There was many occasions, in fact, they never even got a response, okay? And there's a lot of frustrations in these different neighborhoods. So that did not happen, even though they did go through the exercise. So I think having elected officials involved might give it that extra push. But, I can name some streets, the Walton Drives, the Upper Prince Street, Scour, just to name a few where, you know what, they never got a response. They went through the exercise and never got a response. So that's where I think we need to be involved in the consultation process, besides the residents, which is more importantly than anything else in the exercise. But I know I've talked to a lot of residents and said, look, we went through the process, but to no avail.
And I think, Councillor Twill, further to that is once that form's done, correct me, Scott, but in our policy, then there's some data collected to determine whether or not that makes sense based on speed. We do collect the data to see what is the speed on that street. So the big piece that I'm hearing and that we definitely always know we can do better in is the communication. If someone takes the time to put in an application and goes and takes the time to have their residents sign, and they don't hear anything back, that's not acceptable. But if they could hear back, thank you for your application, unfortunately, based on our data that we've collected on our policy, it's not meeting requirement at this time, then I think that's the piece that we could probably do better, and I'm just putting that out there to our senior management and all of us, because that's not okay if they're not hearing back. But there is a second part after they fill out a form. And we know everybody feels that people speed on their street. That's where the data will come in to justify whether it does or it doesn't. Sorry, poor Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, just to follow up on a couple of things Mayor Brown said, just to clarify, Mayor Brown, so on page 12 here, number of bumps, number of speed humps, that's 100 and whatever, so many each ward. But that's not where, we don't know, yeah, oh, well, okay. The other question, the number, Mayor Brown, you talked about 75, so there's 100 here. What are you saying you want the number to be 175 in total?
He's got 100 here, he only has 75 on stock. He has to order 25 more. So instead of ordering 25 more, order 75 more, and they have 150. Then work it out. Madam Chair, could I just say one thing to just follow up what you're saying? I appreciate this discussion, and again, I am not, and I don't think Councillor Twill, and I'm not speaking for him, but I am not directing staff where to put these. I'm not, and I know you're not. I'm just saying that I get information from residents. I get information from these petitions that have been, followed. They're following the process. They've done their due diligence. So that input, that data is important part of the decision-making and where they go. That's all I'm saying. I'm not telling staff.
100%.
And I know you're not, and I can't speak for Councillor Twill.
I know,
But Councillor Twill,
nobody is.
we have to be part of the process by.
We know our communities, so we can verify that, there is
Voices.
an issue on, for example, Oak Drive will not qualify based on our criteria in our speed hump policy for a speed hump.
Yeah.
It's considered a throughway road. But it's still a very residential, community-based road and is worth a second look sometimes.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I see our role as far as involvement
Yeah,
with these.
and to add to speeding, Anna Keenan was at our meeting last night for civic
Of course.
disabilities advisory, persons with civic disabilities advisory committee. And she talked about how we have to look at other ways, and I know Scott knows about this, our chief engineer, so does Albert. We have to look at other common methods, that is allowing parking on streets. I always get the term confused. On our Hurley Street, it's a chicane.
Chicane.
More of those chicanes have to be installed because they do work. There has to be a multi-layer approach in how we deal with speeding in our neighborhoods. But it's also about trying to educate people that we have a responsibility. So my last question is, so if a neighborhood fills out the form for a speed hump, does that stay on file, or does it have to be renewed every year? Like, I'm just thinking that there is a statutory of limitations on those forms, because I was told by some of the neighbors down in Gower Street.
And that's a great question. I thought that was going to be included in our policy, that it would be.
So, Madam Chair, through to His Worship, so yes, what we would put in the, I think it's in there, it's supposed to be, 5 years. So it gets approved for 5 years. At year 4, we start the review process. Does it still warrant merit? As we all know, demographics change, neighborhoods change, and those are things that might not warrant it. At that point in time, too, as you mentioned, looking at other methods, a 5-year study is a really good time frame to see, okay, if this is continuing, after 5 years, you continue to need a speed hump, okay, that's time we start looking at, do we put a chicane, a small button like we have on Oak and Brackley Point Road? There are a number of tools in the toolbox that we can do, but you can do a raised crosswalk. That's another one. Very simple things to do. Lowish cost, but there is a lot of there's more cost than speed humps. And the beautiful thing about speed humps, it gives you a temporary relief from speeding on roads that have some issues, but it also allows us to study the effect on it. And one of the things sometimes can have a negative effect is you reduce speed on that street while you're moving the issue to another street. So we don't want to jump ahead or get ahead of ourselves and put out all these permanent traffic control devices until we truly know what's happening. And that's why we're starting here. We need from a staffing level, we need to kind of get this in place first. Give ourselves the 5 years to start studying, okay, where are those key areas that we need to start targeting in year 3, 4, and 5 from now.
And these
for those
also damage the
permanent-
asphalt you do. So when you're doing these paving of roads and stuff, I don't know about you, your worship, but if you're ever going through like the community of Bedford, or you feel like you're on a ride, because every 500 feet, there's a raised speed hump on pavement. But maybe when you're planning to do paving on certain streets that we know are
Exactly.
problematic, would be the time where you'd want to plan to put in a raised hump on that road, so it's more of a permanent solution to.
Exactly, or if we're
roads.
doing other infrastructure upgrades, whether it's, curb and gutter, things like that, that's the time to look at those things. So again, it's trying to have this is kind of step one, getting this in place, and then getting this figured out, and then, identifying those areas where we want to start putting in more permanent traffic control devices. And so it's something that we're working toward, but again, this is kind of step one. We need to fine tune this process because there's still some loose ends that make it challenging for us. Again, right now, the existing process is there's no reset period, which again, as demographics change, there are some speed humps out there that don't really make sense. But because they have been there and there are still a few residents on the street that still want to see it there, it makes it challenging for us to remove them unless we have this policy that states, in support of council, of course, to have that means to remove that and replace it.
Councillor Twill?
Yeah, I think, Scott, I'm glad you pointed that out regarding, when you put in a traffic calming measure, Harley Street is a case in point. It intensified the speeding traffic in Gower. Make no mistake about it. It did discourage, it did its job. I wasn't quite sure when it first went in how it was going to work out. You said give it a year. And, I think to a certain extent it has worked out. But it's transferred that traffic over to Gower. And Gower was already problematic, Scott. It already was problematic. So this compounds it. And that's why, you know, there's other methodologies too besides speed humps, but, you know, I guess we'll have to wait for the government on that. But no, I mean, Gower Street is a case in point where, you know, the speeding traffic and Palmer's Lane. Palmer's Lane as well. I mean, you know, Palmer's Lane is a school street, elementary school street. To me, they're a top priority.
Thank you.
Madam
Okay,
Chair.
just wait, please, your worship. Thank you. Danny, you had something you wanted?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to Councillor Twill, I did want to just point out or emphasize that staff do value the information that comes from councillors in terms of identifying issues, because the staff can't be in all places at all times, and you have a connection that staff doesn't have. So we do value that information. As a suggestion to be most effective in terms of communicating that information and to be sure that it gets to the right place, it would be helpful if we direct that information to the department heads, and then the department heads can funnel that to the appropriate staff member. Sometimes if we communicate to a lot of people, sometimes it's difficult to know who should respond to that, and a number of people may take it on and results in a bit of inefficiency. So if those information, that valuable information can be directed to the department heads, then the department head can act on it, and you have someone that you can reach back to say, you know, what's the progress of this with the department head. So I think it would just be good to funnel those that information flow through the department heads for consistency, and then the department heads can make the most efficient dispatch of that concern and the action plan going forward. So it's an important piece of the package, and it's much appreciated.
Thank you. Your worship?
Scott, I think, Chief Engineer Scott, your master's is in traffic circulation, correct?
Madam Chair, through the worship, transportation engineering is my background.
Yeah. Yeah, so 8 traffic and common measures for neighborhoods, as you know, chicanes, speed humps. I like this one. There's traffic circles and chokers. Yeah, I'll read that to you later. Lane narrowing. And diagonal diverters. I think we've tried some of this. I give credit to our chief engineer that he's looking at other ways to slow half closures, median barriers, turn islands, and so forth. All great ideas, but there's also planning is involved, because when we design neighborhoods, narrow streets, active transportation pathways, police, they're looking at photo radar to slow down speeders. So there's a lot of mechanisms, or a lot of partners in this. And again, Madam Chair, goes to your common cry from the rooftop, let's work outside the silos.
Thank you, your worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we're looking at wanting to get this program moved up to council for recommendation to adopt either A or B. It's not, a recommendation coming from you guys is what?
We have put,
Option A.
yes, I believe it's.
You're going to include the current existing list of ward speed humps, so council will have an opportunity to look at what is existing versus what's being recommended, correct?
My apologies, sorry, I'm just trying to make sure we have the right I have the right information, what we wrote in here. So we did recommend to adopt option 2 as staff.
Right.
Option B or option 2.
Option B.
Yeah.
So you're going to also, though, include in the package the current existing speed hump that we're operating under right now.
Yep, correct.
As far as, and Eleanor, you can help his worship wanting to look at, because that would require more money, which we wouldn't have in our existing budget, because we didn't budget for those. Does that have to come through this part right now, or is that a separate request? And do we have the means? Maybe what we could do is put a notice of motion for him to look at.
Madam Chair, all I want to do, it's noted in the minutes, so what's come from the floor, part of this discussion when we bring it up at council. I think that's the appropriate time to bring it up, because 25, well, we must, in order to get to this 100, we have to buy additional 25.
Okay.
So I will be adding 50 to that 25, so 150, and then let the, let the powers that be with some, input from these petitions, help come to a decision of where do we need extra ones. And in terms of getting them down, I don't think we're looking at an expanded timeframe. I think we just have to put more resources, manpower, person's resources to it. And Madam Chair, look, in the past, we've tried this technology of developing streets with humps in them. It makes a plowing operation very difficult. So that's why we went to the portable ones in the
I'm
past.
thinking now they must have something new out there, Your Worship, because they have them every second eye blink in Halifax. So I
Yeah.
can't imagine, there's a lot of public transportation happening there.
Yeah.
I'm sure since the back in the day in 2004, there might be new means. Is there,
Yeah.
Scott?
Madam Chair's Worship. So the platforms or raised crosswalks are a little bit easier to plow. The key is making sure they're marked, making sure drivers know where the routes are, so they can slow down when they hit them. The plow blade will float. It's also about how they're installed properly. If it's got to be ramped up just so right, so that when that plow blade hits, it will jump like it's supposed to and float up over. So it's all about the proper installation. I know which ones you're talking about. I think top Atlantic, there's still some existing up there.
Oh, yeah.
But
cost,
the rounded ones, they were pretty harsh. They were never installed properly or designed properly at the time for plows. So there are lots of options. They're in many cities around North America that have snow conditions and plowing like us. It's just making sure we find the right fit for our usage.
And I think there's always going to be work in that, but that's great. So right now on the floor is the staff are looking for us to recommend option B for council for discussion. Would I have someone that's comfortable moving that? Councillor Twill? Oh,
Is it A or B? Can we get a
okay.
clarification?
Sorry.
And again, Madam Chair, while we're waiting to find that out.
Option A did have the council consultation piece in it, I believe, from the last time, if I could recall that.
Yeah. So what is it, A or B?
I'm thinking it's A. We don't have the
My
existing.
apologies. It is option A. Is
With
what
the
we're-
council consultation pieces in part of option A.
I
Yeah.
believe
So
that
you're
is
still
correct,
good
yes.
moving that ahead.
Yep.
Okay, Danny, do you have something you want to add before
Yeah.
I get a seconder?
Just wanted clarification from
You are. Yep.
the manager. Is the document on, I'm sorry, don't have the page, page 18, is that option A? That's recommended?
Yes, the document that's included here is what we're calling option A.
Which is the recommendation?
Yes,
Yeah,
which is
thanks.
the recommendation. So we'll make sure that is very clear in in what comes to council for discussion.
Again, Madam, question clarification. Page 18, digital page is City of Charlottetown Public Works Temporary Speed Hump Program. So that's part of, also, we're looking at page 12 that lays out the numbers and where they're going. That's part of A2. Correct?
What are you asking?
12, it lays out the numbers, where they're going in the wards, and there's 75, but they have 100 calculated, they have to order 75 more. I just want to make sure that the minutes include that I've requested to add 50 more.
And I also want to include it because I did just get a thought, because I knew I was trying to remember why adding more wasn't, and I know there was discussion that things like the way our resources are right now, plow damage, cleanup, those things will be not happening as fast if we go with more speed humps, because the focus, of course, will be doing that job. So there's things, and Scott, I would like all of that information presented to council so that they have that information. Adding 75 speed humps, sure. Here's what the cost is going to be that we'll have to get approved, and also here's what's going to sacrifice based on our human resources right now.
We're adding, no, he's already adding 25.
Yes,
so he has
another
that budget.
50.
So this
But
would be 50.
there's, with
yeah.
every ad, there's going to be things that are give and take. So I just want that information included. CAO Elner.
Yeah, thanks. So, thank you, Chair. So if the mayor wants to pass a motion to do that, I think that would be good, because then your procedural bylaw will allow you to vote on that motion for the extra 75. And in the meantime, Scott can figure out the cost, and then also identify where that money is coming from. So that would be part of the resolution as well. So at council, you would have two. One would be approval of the program that's set out here. Two would be the additional 75.
The additional 50.
Additional
They've already
50
ordered
speed humps.
25, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's deal with the move to council option A for approval. So we have Councillor Twill who's moved that.
Yeah.
His worship
Yeah.
seconded that. Are we all, who's all in favor of moving that?
Yeah.
Everybody. The second thing that we're going to ask from this committee, because his worship's put that on the floor, is that Public Works purchase an additional 50 speed humps for the existing
Moved.
program. So that's moved by his worship. Is that seconded by anybody? Seconded by
So
Councillor
the
Twill.
resolution's on the floor.
The
Okay.
resolution's on the floor.
Okay, so is, Madam Chair, through the chair to the chief engineer or the project engineer, Albert, is this a capital or an operational expense?
Madam Chair, through his worship, so it would be a capital expense.
Thank you, that's all I need.
It would be, your worship, but with the capital expense of purchasing the devices, there's going to be other expenses that are going to come with that. Or stuff that's going to get cut. So that's the stuff I really want included too. So people have the information, then they can make their most informed decision when they're deciding whether or not they feel that's worth it. Okay, so all those in favor of moving both those resolutions, okay, thank you. Whew, it's going to be good discussion that night, Scott. Okay, the 6D is our capital projects update, which is great. If you want to have a look, anybody have any questions? I mean,
Yes.
we see the same projects every month.
Exactly. So if there's any questions, we can answer them, but I think everything's pretty straightforward. Things are moving forward as we anticipated at this time.
Councillor, before I just come to you, Councillor McAleer, one thing I will point out, and I know there's been discussion, the mayor's been a big advocate, our Eastern Gateway project, we certainly still have to stay on top of the grading on that new roadway down to Water Street. It was like bad. There's a lot of traffic that's obviously traveling there, and it needs to be regularly graded. I think that's why my tire's flat, but anyway, we'll leave that. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, if it's you or the manager, if you're not clear in the answer, just on the sidewalks, I noticed all the all indicated construction tender documents in progress. So is that, do we find ourselves where we are with the sidewalk piece this year, similar where we were in, in years past? And is it kind of behind schedule, on schedule, typical?
Madam Chair, through the councillor, so we're roughly right around where we were last year, so no big surprises there. Would we like to be a little bit earlier? Absolutely, and that's our goal in the future, is to get this out even earlier. We just had a few snags with some survey data collection. That would all ironed out now, and our consultant is full tilt doing this design work. So I hope we will see first tender out in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you. Do you have another question, Councillor? Go ahead. You're good? Okay. All right, so
Chair,
go ahead.
again, just got to follow up what you were asking about. Scott, or Albert, I know Albert's on site. The Grafton Street, no, Water Street Parkway. I noticed there's a lot of concrete pipe down there. It must be 1,500 mil pipe, but there's a lot of pipe. So is that the pipe, just again for clarification, is that the pipe that will be running from the water's edge right up to Joe Giz Park? Is that what it's there for?
That's, Madam Chair, through his worship, that's correct. That's our stormwater pipe, and it will be twinned. So you'll see two of those pipes side by side right out to, right through the event grounds, right out to Grafton Street, and then tie into the existing stormwater system out on Grafton Street. So it's a lot of pipe, and that's how we're fixing the that issue, stormwater management issue in that area. That's what it takes.
So, again, Madam Chair, are you filling in the ditch that runs parallel between Joe Giz Park and the Holland College parking lot, which is on the north side of Grafton Street East? So when you cross the event grounds, you'll see that large ditch, which has been an issue for many, many years. It's an open ditch. Is that 1,500 mil going in there too?
We'll have to check, and we'll take that under advisement and get your response on that one.
Are you familiar with that, Albert?
We'll check into it, and I'll circulate an email to you.
Yeah, I don't
clarify
think it's
that.
part of it.
What's that?
I don't think it's part of it.
I'm not sure, so I would have to clarify.
Get that information for you. All right, thank you. Okay, so 6E is street resurfacing package A. The recommendation from staff is that we accept, or we recommend to council the acceptance for this, of the submission of Island Construction in the amount of $1,654,793.70 plus all applicable taxes. The report's there with the breakdown and the justifications as to why they're recommending that.
Moved.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Twill. All in favor? Councillor McAleer, you're good? Okay, thank you. And the same with street resurfacing package B. They are recommending the council accept the submission of M&M Resources, Inc. in the amount of $1,586,283 plus all applicable taxes. Do I have someone that will move that to council for,
I have a question.
okay, Councillor Twill?
I'm not really familiar with this particular company, Scott. I'm not sure if they worked for the city before, if there was contract work that was awarded to this particular company. That's my first question. Second question, in terms of the equipment that is required, to pulverize these streets and to do the necessary work, like with Island Coastal or Chapman's, for example, they have the equipment, they have the expertise, credentials, qualifications, experience. Where are we at with, I think there's a little bit of a savings. I don't think it's overly, that much of a savings. But, to award a contract of this magnitude, was there inspection done in terms of equipment? All of those amenities that are required to effectively do the work. I'm not trying to be critical, it's just that I'm not familiar with the company, and I apologize if this particular company has done work with the city previously. If they haven't, that's great, and they've got the expertise, and you could point and give us examples of, we have awarded, a contract or something equivalent where they've come into the city and done this work. So, was there an inspection done of the equipment that's required? I mean, are they going to be doing the work? Are they going to sublet some of it out? Just a few questions to start off with, please.
Did you read, Councillor Twill, where that says Public Works Department is confident in this firm's ability to successfully carry out the work as they're experienced paving contractors completing a variety of paving-related projects in Prince Edward Island over a number of years? Right there?
Yeah, I did. I just like my questions answered.
But you,
Madam Chair, through the councillor, so in regards to the inspection, we only inspect their equipment, or we look at their equipment when they show up on site. They're under contract with the city. Once it's awarded, we will enter into contract. There are minimum standards for the equipment that is doing the work, and if that equipment is not the right equipment as specified or to do the job, we will immediately halt the work until that equipment shows up. That is the typical process if we have any issues with that. there's a variety of different, manufacturers of these equipment, so that's always taken into consideration. So, yes, this company's been around for a while. They are an island company. They have done some work for the city in the past. They've done work for the province. We have no reason to believe that they can't complete this work, as they, as they will be under contract to do, once approved.
Scott, thank you for your response. So Scott, have they, you said they've done work for the city before. Have they completed work, that this amount of work, this work to this magnitude where, again, I'm not familiar, and again, I apologize for not being familiar, but have they done this kind of work before, fulfilling this type of contract here in the city of Charlottetown?
I would have to go back in records to see if they've done the street resurfacing work. I know they've done work around MacLear. They redid half our parking lot out of MacLear one time in the past couple of years. I know they've done some big paving contracts on provincial highways. Again, we have no reason to believe that they can't perform the work. And again, there are mechanisms in place that if they were to not be able to complete it, then they would be on the hook for any damages occurred to the city for us to hire a new contractor.
Just to follow up, Scott, the city of Charlottetown doesn't necessarily have to accept the lowest bid, do we? When ratings are put in place. So it's not necessarily the lowest bid. I mean, your staff, yourself, you just do a rating system and you rate it. So again, it's not a prerequisite that the city of Charlottetown accepts the lowest bid, correct?
So I believe we're getting a little confused on tenders, proposals, and requests for quotes. So a tender is a document, which is this one. This is the method we use for this. That is very prescriptive in terms of the material we want, where it's going to be placed, the equipment to use, and how to do it. Then the contractor gives us a unit price for each line item. So we ask for line items for asphalt, different types of asphalt, aggregate, and different types of work. Each bidder gives us a unit price for each of those line items. And at the end of the day, they sum it up, and as long as they sign on a dotted line showing that they can do the work, we have no reason to believe that they can't do the work, and they are the low bid. Public procurement says we accept the low bid because that is in the best interest of the city of Charlottetown in terms of financial.
But my question is, the city of Charlottetown, please help me. Question is, the city of Charlottetown doesn't necessarily have to accept the lowest bid. I mean, that was written right into the, request for proposals or tendering process. I think that's part of our procurement policy. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but, as long as I've been around here, I was always told, and it was right in the advertisements, that the city of Charlottetown doesn't have to accept the lowest tender.
We don't have to accept the lowest tender for sure, but when they meet criteria based on what the requirements are in the tender and they're the lowest bid, it would be absolutely, it would have to be a reason why we wouldn't accept the lowest bid if we're going to save taxpayers of Charlottetown $200,000 and they're confident that the work can be done. Do you have anything you'd like to chime in on, Councillor McAleer?
No, I'm just curious, Councillor Tweel, is it on this particular tender, let's just look at the numbers here, Island Construction, right? Let's call it 1.7. And then M&M Resources, 1.5. And then Chapman, whatever, 1.8. So are you suggesting that we shouldn't consider the 1.5?
What my inquiry is based on, as I said previously, is based on track record, experience, having the necessary equipment in place. I mean, I've never known this particular company, and I'm not saying they can't do the job. They probably do a fantastic job. That's not what I'm saying. is that to award a contract of this magnitude, this is a new one to me. This is a new one to me compared to the other companies, so I'm just wondering, do you have all the necessary resources, equipment, and, staff is willing to sign off on it, and, I can tell you that we've awarded contracts before, and Mr. Adams will tell you, where the awarding of a contract was, geez, I can remember one, it was much greater. So that's why I asked the question. I'm trying to understand the process, I'm trying to understand the procedures, and I'm trying to understand the rationale as to, why we're looking at a recommendation by the staff on this particular contract.
I'm going to let you again justify why you are recommending this. Really quick in a summary, because it's either he's going to support this recommendation or he doesn't have to. That's kind of the option we're at right now. You feel confident as the manager that they've met criteria, they have what it takes, they're the lowest bid, and that's what you're recommending on your behalf of your recommendation?
Correct.
Okay.
Once awarded, they're legally bound to complete the work as specified.
Okay, so I need to have someone move whether or not we're going to accept staff's recommendation to go with M&M Resources for the tender.
I'm moving
You're
it
gonna
up
move
to
that
council.
council. Do
Yeah.
I have someone second it? Okay, all those in favor of moving this to council? For or against? No, so 2-1. Thank you very much. Good discussion. Item 6G, the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. These are the new signs that they have put, I think, around our school zones, or crosswalks, are they, Scott? And we are looking to get more in?
That's correct, Madam Chair. So this is for, I believe it's another 10 crosswalk locations that we will be selecting over the next few months to deploy additional crossing lights.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Twill, seconded by His Worship. Any
Resolution's on the
question?
floor? Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, through the chair to the chief engineer, like that, chair to the chief engineer. My question, chief engineer, is that again, our areas, we're on the ground, we're getting information. So again, not telling you what you do, and I don't want to tell you what to do. Under the MGA, I cannot tell you what to do. But I do have, recommendations. I know one that is definitely needed, and I'm just bringing this to your attention, just for information purposes, is Belvedere Avenue, just near the roundabout by the farmer's market. That intersection has, people just don't look, don't care. I shouldn't say don't care, it's just not, what's there now, those overhead lights are not working. It's those rapid flashing, similar to what we have down by the 1911 jail. But other than that, they are very effective, and I think that this is money well spent.
I agree, and an evaluation to move that. Anytime you want a reassessment, send him an email. Because it's
No,
not
just
something that we
bring it
have
up
to
on the
bring up
floor,
at
just
committee
bring it up
level,
on the
but
floor,
that's
yeah.
good. Thank you.
Did you move it?
You
Okay,
can
I
both
second.
move, you
I
happy people.
I second it.
Moved and seconded on to
second
council.
Councillor
Are we
Twill's
good? Thank
resolution.
you. Okay. You both supported it.
Moving it.
That's great. Okay.
Moving it up to
On to
council.
6H. It's getting to the 1.5 hour mark, so now we're going to start getting off track, and everybody's going to stay focused and keep going on this great Kent Street lighting project update. Thank you, Scott Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think most individuals around this table are familiar with the Kent Street Lighting Upgrade project that has been taking place over the past couple of weeks. The city was presented this back in, I believe it was 2022, by Discover Charlottetown. They were able to leverage a number of funding streams and came also to the city asking for a contribution to the project. At that time, the council approved $125,000 towards to that project. And the reason why we said it was a great project, it actually replaced the oldest old-fashioned lanterns, or that section of old-fashions are, I believe, our oldest in the city. So the infrastructure was aging, and it was a good time to upgrade them as part of this whole project. So we issued, or the city contributed $125,000 at that point in time. Since then, the project costs have significantly escalated. And it's from a number of things. Some of the pricing that they got was during COVID, and pricing, of course, has continued to rise steadily. Cost of labor, of course, is up. And then a few unknowns that were at the time when they put this project together was they did not realize when they put the project together, did not realize the challenges underground, so required more specialized excavation on the site. So at the end of the day, there were a number of other parties that increased their contribution to the project. I believe ACOA was one of them. Discover Charlottetown increased their project, and since then, our friends of CADC have also gotten involved and contributed to the project. So at the end of the day, there was a cost, a bit of a shortfall, about $75,000, with CADC agreeing to cover 50% of that, if the city was willing to cover the remaining balance of $37,500 plus tax to finish off the replacement of these lights. And so we're here asking for council approval to fund that remaining balance so that the project can be finalized.
I see in your report, you're believing this is a great deal for the city as the new lighting and electric services, which were nearing the end of their life for a significantly reduced cost, basically making our city more warm and fun.
Walkable.
Pardon?
Walkable.
Walkable, yes, your worship. I can't wait to walk under the lights.
No, I just want to say, Madam Chair, this is a good project.
Wonderful. I'm
And
glad
it-
to hear that.
Chief Engineer, if you can find the money, and no different finding the money for those additional speed humps.
Thank you.
Councillor Twill?
So the recommendation is to move this on to council. Do you have a question that you'd like to ask, Councillor Twill?
No, yeah, my first question is, Scott, what was the total cost of the project?
It was in the 300,000 range.
300?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can confirm the final amount and provide that with to you.
In terms of planning, I'm just looking at, how long did it take to put this plan together? I know we've been talking about it for the last 2 or 3 years, but I guess, here's why I'm asking, Scott. As you know, council passed a resolution, have yourself and, the other engineers here in the city's corporation, along with the chief of police, the fire chief, to come up with a safety plan for the market on Queen Street. I know a lot of people are waiting for that plan, so hope we can revisit that, and hopefully, if everyone's agreeable, we can go back to where the market's been for the last 14 years. So,
Okay, we're going to stay focused on the lights.
no,
That's a
I'm
great
very focused.
discussion.
Believe
Yeah,
you me,
I
I'm very
know.
focused, Madam Chair, very
So-
focused.
Yeah.
So I do support the expenditure, Scott, but I'm hoping that, we can go with that same commitment for the work that needs to be done on Queen Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Twill. So we have His
I'm
Worship
moving-
moving it.
I'm moving it, Madam
hearing
Chair.
you're going to second that.
I'm moving.
Councillor Twill. All
moving it
those
to-
in favor of getting this to
just-
council?
Just 1 second, Madam Chair. No,
We're
no,
not
the
going
resolution's
yet.
on the floor.
Just-
The
okay.
resolution's on the floor.
Okay,
The difference between supporting and moving something on to council. No, it's not. No, it's not.
okay. We're going to just be glad that Kent Street Lighting Project will go on to council for approval for the additional $37,500 plus applicable taxes. Thank you very much.
With the resolution on the floor? Can I just speak when you're finished? Yeah.
No, we already voted. Yeah, we voted. Yeah,
No, we
it's
didn't.
done. Thank you.
No.
I would like to say right now, some sad news for our Department of Public Works. Well, happy news for our employee, project manager, engineer Albert was married in Christmas time, New Year's Eve, to some lucky girl, and now he's leaving, which is really going to be terrible for our city. We are going to miss you, Albert, and all the great work you've done. I'm going to miss you. Scott has informed me that we need to be prepared with, this is a huge loss in the department as far as the projects and some of the things that are in place, and Albert is going to be really challenging to replace with his knowledge and his expertise and all the great work he's done. So I think we're going to have to brace ourselves for a little bit of woe time, and really wish you all the best, and thank you for everything you've done for the city, Albert. You're a great asset. You're going to be missed, and I'm glad you're a Facebook friend.
I want to echo that too, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Albert, and good luck.
Now I need a motion to adjourn. Oh, new business first. I
New
need a-
business, I
New
just wanna-
business would be any notion that you want to talk about next
Yeah.
time, nothing we're talking about
Just want to put a
today.
notice for the heritage lights that are throughout the city, especially on Victoria Row. Hopefully, we're moving quickly to replace that old infrastructure with LED lights because the lighting down on Lower Fitzroy Street from Rochford to Terry Fox with the new lighting is great. I was down there the other night. So please, I want to put that as a notice of motion to improve that lighting, especially on Victoria Road, because it is quite dark with the old lighting system. Thank you.
And I'd like a notice of motion put on for just street lighting. Where are we with new subdivisions still without street lights, as well as the replacement for the LED lights that we've been trying to move on? So that would be do you want to jump in before I go to Councillor Twill, CAO?
Yeah, Chair, you're just requesting information at a future meeting, right?
Correct.
And
We're
same with
just,
the mayor?
we're not discussing it
It's
today.
not a notice of motion then, it's just new business.
New
for
business
future
coming for the
meeting.
next meeting. Thank you. All the fancy language. We're getting used to all the good words. Councillor McAleer, do you have something for information that you would like brought back to our committee?
Yeah, for new business, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure possibly just how to maybe facilitate this or advance it on or whatever. Mayor Brown, you were sent a letter from Mike Cochran on Port Authority, Charlottetown, and, there's kind of two points or two kind of requests, I guess, that was kind of shared in that letter. I'm just wondering if that's something that we could take to the committee here to potentially discuss.
Could you forward the letter off to the chair of Public Works?
And to manager as well,
And the
because I
manager
think
is
that was
the
something,
chief
of course,
engineer?
that we'll bring
And-
up, seeing our
and the
CAO
committee
nod.
members?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll share it with all committee.
We'll see it when we get it there, Councillor Twill, we'll talk. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved, seconded, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay. What's the other part? Albert.